All right, Philip and Jam, just give me a heads up when you see it go live.
Sure. All right, we're on.
Okay, I think I'm on too. Welcome, everybody, to our Wednesday YouTube, Facebook, Live, wherever you are out there. Today, we're going to talk about expert insight into your disability benefits. We have a special guest here with us, Mark Snearowicz. Mark, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. And of course, Jam is here. Philip is here, going to moderate. So we're going to go through how your Social Security disability benefits interact with your Medicare benefits this time of year. Some things that maybe you know, hopefully some things that you don't. We're going to talk about some things that are new. So if you're going through the process of disability approval or you're already approved, I expect that you'll pick something up from this event. Now, at the end, hopefully Mark can stay with us for a few minutes and we can take some questions that you may have for him. All right. Good. So first of all, I want to just share a brief story about the Mark Brian connection. I have been doing this work here at the Disability Digest and helping people get their benefits, keep them and maximize them since 2006. And there were a lot of questions that I wasn't successfully answering regarding when people get awarded and how their Medicare benefits worked and operated. So I figured I would just refer these individuals and questions out to others in the industry. Big name companies that still exist and operate today. But my solution and my theory wasn't effective because unfortunately, the challenges that people face with Medicare benefits that are Social Security disability recipients are radically different than somebody that ages into Medicare, that age 65 and maybe just sees their primary and takes some aspirins. So you have conditions and you have medications and you have income limits and special benefit plans that you're eligible for. So the last thing I want to do, Mark, maybe you remember this, is take a test to go through and become an agent, because testing is just not my thing and I had enough going on. But you pointed out like the value and the service that we could provide to members. So I thank you for doing that. And a lot of what we have learned has been certainly influenced by you to help people hopefully do the right things. So thank you for that. Thank you for your support here. Now, for those of you about Mark, he is probably the guy. I'm going to say you are the guy in the US that works with the most agents and other people that serve the disability space with their Medicare needs. I don't know of anybody else that does this like you do. So you've seen lots and lots of scenarios and can share a lot from that experience, right? So without further ado, you ready to get into it?
I'm ready.
All right, great. So first of all, I just want to start with the basics. And when I say the basics, when people are going through the disability approval process, one of the challenges that they have is like, what's the deal with Medicare? Some people don't even know that they are entitled to it. So explain what the connection is between Social Security, disability benefits, Medicare, and the eligibility piece.
So once someone is deemed disabled by a court of law, then they start receiving their SSDI income. And once they receive 24 payments of SSDI income, then they become eligible for Medicare. Now that can be 2 years or more after they have their onset of the illness or injury. Sometimes they receive back pay for numerous months, and if they receive, say, 10 months of back pay, that all counts towards the 24 SSDI payments. And then once they have received that 24th SSDI payment, then they become eligible for Medicare.
Okay, nice. I have a prop here today that I brought along. This is an actual award letter. If you're not approved, this is what the end result is. So in this award letter right here, you reference that there's 24 payments, right?
That's right.
So in this award letter right here, this text in red said they're entitled to benefits of May of 2021. So it would be after 24 payments or 24 months from May of 2021.
I'm just reading this here. Well, so it says here that you became disabled on November 24th of 2020. So yeah, so then there's the 5-month waiting period. Yep, so that would make sense. So it'd be May of 2023.
Yep. So what Mark is pointing out, everybody, is where there is another layer of confusion, if you will, is that some people think it's 24 months from this November date, but that's not it. You have that 5-month elimination period. So like Mark said, it's 24 months of payments, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. So once somebody becomes eligible, let's go through there's all kinds of different flavors of Medicare, right? So there's Medicare Part A, B, then you get into the other part. So what's the basic eligibility that somebody has?
So for Medicare, they either have to be turning 65 and have worked more than 40 quarters and paid into Medicare, or their spouse has, or they can be eligible, of course, as we just mentioned, by receiving 24 SSDI payments as well.
Okay. So when they first become eligible, they get that card, right? So can you walk us through, like, what is the card? What are they eligible for?
Yeah, so the original Medicare, which is the government insurance, has 2 parts, Part A and Part B. Part A is the hospitalization side of Medicare. For most people, there's no premium for Part A. For 1% of Americans, there's a Part A premium. Just for the sake of time, because it's only 1%, I won't get into that, but happy to at a later date. But so most people, Part A is an entitlement. So that means it doesn't cost you anything. Part B is the medical side of Medicare. So that's everything related to your medical care, treatment, preventative costs, or preventative care, such as doctor's visits, tests, labs, preventive care like some immunizations, colonoscopy, mammograms, things like that are also covered under Part B. In 2023, most people will pay $164.90 a month for their Medicare Part B premium. If you're drawing Social Security, which of course you would be if you are receiving SSDI, that $164.90 is deducted automatically from your Social Security check. It's estimated that in 2024, that premium will increase to $174.80. Now, if you are receiving Medicaid or Medi-Cal in California, the state should pay your Medicare Part B premium, but most people will have to pay $174.80 in 2024. And some people, just like if you're on Medicaid, you won't have to pay your Medicare Part B premium, or you most likely won't have to pay it. for some people that earn over a certain amount of money, they might have to pay more than the 174.80 in 2024, and that estimated amount is 103,000. So if you earn over $103,000 as of your 2022 tax return, you will have to pay more than 174.80. Part B, or let me back up a little bit. Part A has a deductible. In 2023, that deductible is $1,600. In 2024, it's estimated to increase to $1,652. Part B also has a deductible. In 2023, it's $226. In 2024, it's estimated to be increasing to $240. So what that means is that for your medical care, if you go visit a doctor, you go have an MRI or something like that, with original Medicare only, you would have to pay the first $240 in 2024, and then Medicare kicks in and pays 80%, which means that you would have to pay the remaining 20% of your medical bill. And now just to point out quickly here as well, original Medicare does not include prescription drug coverage. And so that's separate. And obviously we're going to get into that in a couple minutes, but that's basically Part A and Part B in terms of premiums, deductibles, and then the 20% co-insurance for Part B.
Mm-hmm. So let's go through an example. Somebody's on just Medicare A and B. They've got to go to either a doctor or a hospital, whatever it is. Is deductible different? I didn't catch that. Is the amount different? 1,600?
For 2024, it's estimated to go up to $1,652. In 2023, it's $1,600.
Okay, so $1,652. You have that deductible, and then you're on the hook for 20% of whatever the remaining cost is, right?
Well, so that's for an inpatient hospital stay.
Okay.
It'd be $1,652, but then also plus the Part B deductible of $240 if you had not already met that at some point earlier in the calendar year, and then 20% of the cost of your treatment.
Okay, all right. So let's call it $1,900 between the two, and then 20%, a little rounded off. Fair enough?
For an inpatient hospital stay, yes.
Okay, so and that's you're going to learn more about different coverage options, so that if this kind of is sticker shock for you, there's ways around it to prevent it. All right, so we've talked about A and B, and with A and B, you can go anywhere, right? You're like a free agent. You go to pretty much any doctor or hospital that takes Medicare.
Yes, as long as they take Medicare, that's correct.
Okay, good. All right, so then we have other parts. Let's bounce around a little bit. Let's talk about Part D, what that is. So we've covered A, B. Right now we're putting a pause on C. We're going to go to D.
So Part D is the prescription drug side of Medicare. If you are adding a Part D prescription drug plan, there is typically a premium for those drug plans, which is often covered if you're on Medicaid. But if you're not on Medicaid, then you'd have to pay a premium. Most of the drug plans, not all of them, but most of them have a deductible. The standard deductible for 2024, I believe, is $545. And then you have, after you've met the deductible, then you have co-payments for different drugs. There are 5 tiers of drugs. Tier 1 is the least expensive. Tier 5 is the most expensive. And you have to pay those co-payments until you reach the coverage gap. And then once then when you get into the coverage gap, you have to pay a percentage of your medical costs, or excuse me, the prescription costs. And then once you've reached $8,000 of prescription spending, then you reach what's called the catastrophic phase. And in 2024, there's no more cost beyond the catastrophic phase. It used to be 5% in 2023, but once you've hit $8,000, your medications will not cost you any more for the remaining months in the year. Now, before anyone worries too much, very few people reach the catastrophic phase. So most people pay the deductible and then co-payments for the rest of the year.
Okay, so let's wind this back into to A and B, Mark, and talk about if somebody has A and B, and we've talked about the deductibles of around $1,900 and the 20%. There is a Medicare supplement strategy that you can use to kind of plug that hole. So just one more layer on this. Let's say that somebody has an inpatient hospital experience that's like $10,000, right? So they've got their deductible of $1,900, then they've got the 20% on top of that. Can you walk us through an example based on that situation about how a Medigap solution could be an option, right?
For sure. So the first thing to point out is that you may have heard the term Medigap, you may have heard the term Medicare supplement. They are identical, just two different names for the identical type of insurance coverage. There are multiple different types of Medicare supplements, Medigap policies. The most popular plans are Plan G as in George and Plan N as in Nancy. So the way that a Plan G works is that original Medicare pays first, and then the supplement, the Plan G, would pick up everything that Medicare doesn't cover other than the Medicare Part B deductible, which is $240 in 2024. Now, when I say they pick up everything that Medicare doesn't, what I mean by that is that Medicare pays first, and then what is left over from that is what the Medicare supplement will pick up. Medicare doesn't cover certain things like some cosmetic surgeries, experimental treatments, things like that. So it's not that in order for the supplement to pay, the Medicare, the government has to pay their portion first. So with a Plan G, you would pay your monthly premium. You have to pay a monthly premium for these health plans. Then you pay your Part B deductible of $240, and then everything else is covered, assuming it's medically necessary and Medicare pays first. Now, the other option, there are many options, but the other most popular option is a Plan N. The way the Plan N works is it's very similar to the Plan G, except for, so you still have to pay the Part B deductible, but then you also have to pay a $20 copayment to see your doctor, family doctor or specialist, and then a $50 deductible to if you go into the emergency room. And then after that, everything is covered again, assuming Medicare paid first. So you could let's say a Plan G, you could be in the hospital for a few weeks and have $100,000 worth of medical bills. Medicare would pay 80% of that. The supplement would pay everything else except for the Part B deductible, assuming it's a Medicare approved charge and Medicare paid first.
Okay. So what about what could somebody expect to pay for like a G or an N?
Well, so that ranges significantly, as you might imagine. That ranges by state. It ranges in highly populated states with zip code. It ranges by your age, in some states, your gender. So, with Social Security disability, some states, you can't even get a Medicare supplement if you're under 65. In some states that allow you to have a Medicare supplement and you're under 65, it could be significantly more expensive than if you are over 65. Some states it's the same regardless, but that's pretty hard to quote. I would say just ballparking on average, if someone is turning 65, you're looking at maybe in the ballpark of $150 a month or so. But again, there's so many variables that go into that. That's just a very, very loose ballpark there. Trying to estimate under 65 is probably not responsible because it varies so widely from state to state.
Yeah. And what about the, you mentioned the under 65, but is there any medical underwriting that for these that would be prohibitive? Or...
Yeah, so, well, yes and no. So when you first go on to Medicare, and you apply for a Medicare supplement, Medicare Part B, there is no medical underwriting, no pre-existing conditions. You're given the best premium for the certain carrier you pick, based on wherever you happen to live. Now, if you want to change your Medicare supplement down the road, 6 months or more down the road, and there's some asterisks here in terms of special election periods and other opportunities to let you change your Medicare supplement. But just saying in general, if you live in the same area, your financial position stays the same, so on and so forth. If you want to change your supplement down the road, you would have to answer medical underwriting questions in order to change your supplement.
Okay. So it's possible that somebody could get on it if it's available in their area. They're going to pay a monthly premium, so they would need to certainly check that out, right? So
yeah, one other thing just to mention though is that if you go on to Medicare for the first time, let's say because of disability when you're 50 years old, if the rules remain the same as they are now, when you turn 65, you get something called an initial election period 2, where you can now get onto a Medicare supplement, which maybe previously when you were under 65, you weren't able to, or maybe the cost for the supplement was so high you couldn't afford it or didn't want to pay that. When you turn 65, you kind of get a reset or a start over where you're treated like everyone else that's turning 65 that has never had Medicare before.
Oh, interesting. I did not know that. So, all right. So if you get approved for disability and you're like 64 years old, all right, you got to deal with it for a year or so, but then you could go through and like get reevaluated, I guess, right? Get a reset. Interesting.
Basically, yeah.
Great tip. Okay. In your experience in dealing with people, like, do you have an idea like what the percentages of people that are disability recipients in the circles you work in end up getting a supplement? Do you have a feel for that?
Generally speaking, it's pretty low because again, we're eliminating multiple states that don't even offer them. So that's a big key. Then we're also eliminating some states where the Medicare supplements are so cost prohibitive for people under 65. And then moving on beyond that, we are eliminating for the states where Medicare supplements are affordable, relatively speaking. I mean, to states that aren't affordable. Many people on Social Security disability, their only source of income is their Social Security, is their SSDI. Right. And as a result of that, let's say even a Medicare supplement's available to you at $150 a month, but your total income is $2,000. I mean, that's a pretty big chunk. So I would say overall, Medicare supplements are pretty uncommon for people that are receiving SSDI. Now, they do exist and people do enroll in those, but in the big picture, nationally, it's less common than the other options that we'll talk about shortly.
Okay, so we've talked about A, B, D, Medigap or Medicare supplement. And now we're going to go back and because we skipped C, Medicare Part C, which is also covers Medicare Advantage plans. What's the fundamental like concept of an Advantage plan, Medicare Part C, Mark?
So just like Medicare supplements and Medigap policies are the same thing, different name, Medicare Advantage plans and Medicare Part C are the same thing, effectively, just a different name. And so if you recall from Medicare, original Medicare, Medicare supplement options, the way that those work is you have Medicare A and B that pays first, the supplement pays a portion of what's left over, and you pay a high, well, not a high, but you pay a premium for that. It just varies whether it's high or not. What Medicare parts, and what we didn't mention though with Medicare supplements is on top of that, you would want to add in a standalone Part D prescription drug plan because Medicare supplements don't cover prescription drugs. They do cover medications like for chemotherapy that's administered at the hospital, anesthesia that's administered at the hospital, Ocrevus, which is an infusion drug that's administered at the hospital or clinic for multiple sclerosis, things like that. That's covered under the medical side of Medicare. But the prescription side that you go down to your local pharmacy and pick up a bottle of something, that is covered under Medicare Part D. So that would be an additional premium to your Medicare supplement.
Okay, all right.
Now, what Medicare Part C is, Medicare Advantage plans, that is where your Part A, your hospital coverage, your Part B, your medical coverage, and most often, but not always, your Part D, prescription drug coverage, are all rolled into one plan administered by a private insurance company, but funded by the federal government. So rather than Medicare paying 80% of every bill, they pay a lump sum each month to the insurance carrier of your choice. And now that insurance company administers all of your benefits. So if you have original Medicare plus a supplement plus a drug plan, you are carrying 3 cards with you: your original Medicare card, your Medicare supplement card, and your drug plan card. If you enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan, you have 1 card that you'll carry with you, and that is the Medicare Advantage card, because that covers your health care and your prescription. So you certainly do not want to throw away your Medicare card. You do not want to do that. You want to store it in a safe place where you keep other important documents like insurance, life insurance, those sorts of things, or home insurance, life insurance, auto insurance. Wherever you keep important documents, store your Medicare card there, but you do not need to carry it with you once you have enrolled into a Medicare Advantage plan.
Okay, great. So you can go into a Medicare Advantage plan and you basically get A, B, it is Part C, and D, right? So you get, so it's like a one-stop shop. So like, are there other key benefits to an Advantage plan other than having everything in one place?
Yeah, so firstly, rather than paying for the Medicare supplement premium and the drug plan premium, oftentimes Medicare Advantage plans are lower cost than Medicare supplements. They have much lower premiums typically. But then on the flip side, they have often, not always, because again, these plans vary county by county nationally. So if you live in Fargo, North Dakota, or you live in Los Angeles, your plan options are completely different.
Mm-hmm.
You might even have some of the same insurance carriers offering those plans, but the benefits or the names of those plans are completely different. And so you have co-payments to go to doctors, co-payments for emergency rooms, ambulance, lab services, inpatient hospital stay, basically everything you can think of with your medical care, you would have co-payments. Now, what you don't have anymore, just like with the supplement, you no longer have to pay the Part A deductible. You no longer typically have to pay the Part B deductible. And you have usually, but not always, prescription drug coverage included, and you don't have to pay, more often than not, you don't have to pay the additional premium for the drug plan. So sometimes, now one thing also to mention is with a Medicare supplement, you can continue to go to any doctor nationwide that accepts Medicare, just like with original Medicare. With the Medicare Advantage plans, you typically have network restrictions, which a lot of people don't like that idea conceptually, but in practice, it's not really an issue, because a lot of people will see doctors locally. In most areas, you can find health plans where your doctors are covered. Obviously, not all doctors accept Medicare, not all doctors accept Medicare Advantage plans. Doctors there might be 7 Medicare Advantage plans or 70 Medicare Advantage plans in your area. The doctor might accept some, but not others. But we can help you review that to make sure that you find a plan where your doctors are in network. But typically, most people aren't going around the country, stopping in all sorts of different places, continually seeing doctors. I mean, even snowbirds that might live in, say, Minnesota in the summertime and Arizona or Florida in the winter, many of those people will still see their doctors in their home state. And maybe they'll return home for a week or so to have a doctor's appointment in the middle of the winter or whatnot. But the doctor network restrictions aren't normally a huge issue. Medicare Advantage plans also include many other benefits that are not included with original Medicare. Some plans, and I have to keep saying the asterisk, not all, because Medicare Advantage plans, again, are county by county, and so not all plans are exactly the same. You might have a plan where you live that does not exist where a friend of yours lives in a different county or a different state. But some of these plans include some dental coverage, some vision coverage, some include a fitness benefit, some include an over-the-counter benefit where you can get items over the counter at that you would normally find at a pharmacy over the counter. You can get those at a reduced cost or at no cost. You get a credit every month or every quarter, but again, this varies from plan to plan. Some plans include transportation services. Some plans include meals after a hospital stay. So there's a whole bunch of extra benefits that are included in some of these Medicare Advantage plans.
Okay, I want to be conscious of time. For those of you that are out there, we're going to take some questions in a few minutes, but I want to hit a few items before we get there. Can you explain like the difference between there's HMO and for Medicare Part C, there's PPO, and then there's this new HMO POS plan type?
Yeah, so an HMO is a health maintenance organization. They typically have the most strict network of physicians or the smallest network of physicians, but small is relative. In some areas, these HMO networks are very large, and in some areas, odds are you could find all or most of your doctors in an HMO network. It just varies. So even though it's relatively small, they could still be quite large. If you go outside of the HMO network, you will not have any coverage at all, except for in an emergency. If you live in, say, Denver, and you have an emergency in Denver, or you have an emergency in Boston or Hawaii, doesn't matter, you're covered just like you're in Denver, same cost sharing. But if you want a second opinion for some sort of healthcare in another state or in another region, you're typically not going to be covered at all.
Okay.
A PPO is a preferred provider organization, which has oftentimes a much larger physician network. But then on top of that, it has an out-of-network option where you can go out of network, but it might cost you more. And so staying in network is going to be less expensive. Out of network is going to be more expensive. Then you have an HMO POS, which is a health maintenance organization point of service plan, which is similar but a little different to a Medicare PPO in the sense that you have a physician network, an HMO, and then you have an out-of-network option, but that out-of-network option is normally quite expensive, so it's not really advised that you use that, but it is an option. But it's similar to a PPO, but has some slight variances that are different.
Okay. All right. Interesting. Last, before we start taking some questions, is some people, when they become disability, Social Security disability eligible, are eligible for their Medicaid and also eligible for their Medicare. Oftentimes people are confused. They're like, well, I have healthcare coverage through Medicaid. I really don't want to mess that up, so I'm just going to leave it, or I don't really understand how it works. So can you unpack that one for us?
For sure. So, of course, Medicaid is health insurance offered by the state for people that are 100% poverty line or more. And then, of course, we've discussed Medicare. So you are able to have both of those, Medicare and Medicaid. And there's a term for that. It's called dual eligible. So people that are eligible for both Medicare and Medicaid are referred to as dual eligible, which means that you have both insurances, and typically, but not always, but typically you have 100% coverage for all of your medically necessary healthcare. So Medicare pays, and then Medicaid also pays, so then you don't have to pay typically for your healthcare. Now, on prescription side, oftentimes, depending on your prescriptions, those are also covered, but sometimes, depending on the drug, you might have a small cost sharing for some of the more expensive drugs, but it's dramatically reduced.
Mhm.
Now, as it relates to a Medicare Advantage plan, well, backing up a little bit, actually, if you're dual eligible, you have to go and see doctors that accept both Medicare and Medicaid. And but as a dual eligible, in many areas, you're also eligible for Medicare Advantage plans. Some areas have what are called DSNPs, which are referred to as dual special needs plans, which give you even more benefits on top of what Medicare and Medicaid offers. So it's not going to change your cost sharing. You still should be fully covered for your health care, but then you are eligible for these extra benefits like the dental, the vision, the gym memberships, or fitness programs, transportation, things like that, if they're offered in your area. Your cost sharing won't change, but you're eligible for all these extra benefits. And the only restriction there is now you have to make sure that your doctor is covered in 3 networks: Medicare network, Medicaid network, and then also the health plan that you choose to add into that as well.
I have a question. If somebody keeps their Medicaid and also has a Medicare Advantage plan, they have to make sure that the doctor is in both. They couldn't be covered under Medicaid because they have that status and then go find another doctor that is not Medicaid.
No, so once they're eligible or once they've enrolled into a Medicare Advantage plan, regardless of whether they have Medicare, or excuse me, regardless of whether they have Medicaid or not, they still have to go and see doctors that are inside that Medicare Advantage network. And of course, their doctors still have to accept Medicare and Medicaid.
Okay, good to know. All right. So, folks, we're going to start taking some questions in the last few minutes that Mark has. It looks like you have maybe 9 minutes left. And then if you want to have some assistance from us here at the Disability Digest, as we start to take questions, Jam will put a link into the chat where you can come and join us as a member. If you're already approved, you can request a benefit review. We'll review your benefits, take a look at what you're on now, what you might be entitled to that's different for 2024. So have a look for that. So Jam, Philip, which one of you would like to go first with a question for Mark?
Jam, go ahead. It's quiet on my end. I guess everybody's still sleeping in.
Well, I guess Mark, some at the beginning was confused about the whole thing. I just have a comment that I would like to read here. It's better to get on Medicare Complete plan. Would you care to comment on that?
So Medicare Complete plan is probably referencing a Medicare Advantage plan, because in some areas, certain insurance company offers a Medicare Advantage plan called Medicare Complete. It's a specific product, but it is a Medicare Advantage plan. So that's probably what they're referring to.
Yeah. I just want to echo the comment about confusion. Big amen to that. I mean, this stuff there's a lot of moving parts, not just with your options with Medicare, but with your own situation, with your health, with your condition, with your income. So totally agree.
One thing I would say to that, though, Brian, is that it is more confusing when we're talking in generalities and just basic information. But for an individual case, it makes it very simple, because once we know your zip code, the doctors you see, the prescriptions you take, your preferred pharmacy, we can narrow down all of the confusing options down pretty quickly to help figure out which plan is most ideal specifically for you, as opposed to here, we're trying to cover the whole globe basically, but we can pinpoint specifically for each individual person much more simply.
Yeah, I totally agree. That makes absolute sense. What's next, Jam?
Right. Here's one from Andrew. Once the 24-month period is up, are you automatically signed up for Medicare, or do you have to enroll?
No, so anyone that is currently drawing Social Security, whether they're turning 65 or whether they're receiving Social Security because of SSDI, Once you're in that system and receiving those income payments, you are automatically enrolled. So if you, let's say you're drawing SSDI and now you become eligible for Medicare, but your spouse is working and you don't want Medicare, well, you're automatically enrolled into Medicare, but you can contact Social Security and you can disenroll from Medicare Part B so that you don't have to pay that premium. And then you would stay with your spouse's employment. Now you'd, or employer insurance coverage. You would want to make sure that that insurance coverage is credible, which means it's at least as good or better than original Medicare. And now fast forward, your spouse retires, they lose their job, whatever happens, and now you want to go on Medicare. You would just contact Medicare and say, okay, I'm losing my other insurance. I want to go on Medicare and Medicare Part B. Here's my letter of credible coverage showing that I've been covered by other insurance since I was first eligible for Medicare. And now you can move on and enroll into a Medicare supplement plan if available, Medicare Advantage plan if available, and you will not have any penalties from Medicare.
Thank you for that, Mark. Can you explain the Patriot plan for SSDI recipients?
Well, again, the Patriot plan is just the name of one plan offered by one single insurance carrier. Typically, if I recall, the Patriot plan does not include prescription drugs, but again, it's just one plan of thousands of plans available around the country.
Mhm. Just a note on that, for people that look at the Patriot plan, and if they were to enroll in that, can you explain the implications of that because it doesn't have the Part D?
Yeah, so typically people that enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan without prescription drug coverage are typically people that have credible drug coverage somewhere else. And so they don't need the prescription drug coverage, but they want the Medicare Advantage plan, but they don't want the prescription coverage. This is common for people that have TRICARE for life, career military, things like that. But generally speaking, the Medicare Advantage plans without prescription drugs are pretty few and far between. Most people enroll into the drug plan or the MAPD, the Medicare Advantage prescription drug plan, as a one single unit. But if you do have other drug coverage that's credible and you don't want to add a Medicare prescription drug plan, just make sure you speak with your agent and explain that, and make sure you understand, because sometimes you can have other drug coverage and enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan and not have any interference between the two drug coverages. Sometimes you can enroll into a Medicare Advantage plan with drug coverage, and it can kick you off of whatever other drug coverage you have. And so just make sure that you understand what you're doing before you enroll into a plan without drug coverage, but also before you enroll into a plan with drug coverage.
Okay, good one. Back to you, Jam.
All right. I'm not sure if I should take Medicare Part B when I'm currently on my husband's insurance work plan. I am just afraid that if I don't take it now, I cannot apply for it in the future.
Yeah, so I touched on this a little bit a couple minutes ago, but it's up to you, is the ultimate choice. What would make sense is to compare what you have now with your Medicare options, because in some cases, your Medicare option might be less expensive for you than staying on the employer plan through your husband. However, you also want to verify that the employer plan is credible, which means it's at least as good as or better than Medicare. And the way that you verify this is, if there's a few ways to do it. If it's a very large company that your husband works for, chances are you can call the HR or the benefits administrator, and you can ask them for a letter of credible coverage that shows that the current insurance you have is at least as good or better than Medicare. If it's a small company that he works for, you certainly would likely have a Medicare, or not a Medicare, excuse me, you'd certainly have an insurance agent. That insurance agent that helps the company with their health insurance should be able to provide that for you as well. And lastly, you could also call the number on the back of your insurance card and call the insurance carrier directly and ask them to verify that the insurance is credible. If it's not credible, you would certainly want to enroll into Medicare, or else you could face penalties down the road, as well as a restriction for when you want to or when you're able to enroll into Medicare. But if the insurance is credible, you can just keep moving forward with that. And when the time comes to change or drop that coverage, you can enroll into Medicare without any penalties. But again, the most important thing would be to review the two options, Medicare and the group insurance, just to see which one will be most affordable for you. A lot of people like to stick with the employer plan just because it's what they've known for years and years potentially, but sometimes they could be more expensive when you consider premiums, deductibles, co-insurances, those sorts of things. They can often be more expensive than Medicare, but sometimes they're cheaper. So it's just a matter of going over both options with someone that understands both options to help position you in the most affordable situation for your health insurance.
Okay, wonderful. Listen, I want to be respectful of your time, so I'm just going to do a quick recap here. First of all, thank everybody for showing up today. We talked about Medicare eligibility for folks, and if you joined us and you missed part of this, there'll be a replay will be available. When you're eligible for your Medicare, if you're going through the approval process. And then we talked about the different types of Medicare, Medicare Part A, Medicare Part B, that's like basic Medicare, and the deductibles, what to expect with that. Then we talked about Medicare Part D, drug coverage, and how that works with Medicare Part A and B. We talked about supplements, Medigaps, how those work, what the options are. We talked about Medicare Part C quite extensively, which that applies to most people here. So, and how your benefits interact with Medicaid. So those are the key things that we covered. I hope that everybody enjoyed the show. Mark, wealth of information. Very grateful for you coming out. I learned something every time, so appreciate that.
Happy to help.
Yeah, for sure. So if you're looking for assistance in any way, trying to get approved, keep your benefits or maximize them, Jam has put a link in the YouTube chat, or just go to the Disability Digest. We'll be back next week, everybody. Make it a great day.